Why didn't Meizu introduce the Meizu 19? They haven't announced any new phones in over a year. We've been waiting so long, the Meizu 20 should be a pleasant surprise, right? You are correct, it did provide us with a big surprise. The main surprise is the display. 144Hz, ultra-narrow bezel, straight screen with DC dimming, and super fast, and extremely well-placed ultrasonic fingerprint recognition make this screen many people's dream display. However, there are many details that you cannot see that are not properly done, such as clarity. The 6.55-inch screen features just FHD plus resolution and RGB Delta pixels. This means that reading text will be more fuzzy than on other phones. The maximum brightness is slightly lower than on previous Samsung panel phones, and watching HDR videos isn't as impressive. Its lower bezel is narrow enough, but you can still see that it's a bit wider compared to the other three sides. It's wider than the Xiaomi 13, and is the same width as the Redmi Note 12 Turbo. Simply put, the screen is blurry and not bright enough, and the lower bezel isn't particularly narrow. If the Meizu 20 cost $300, I'd forgive it. But at $435 for a phone with this screen, I can't accept it. Let me guess, you want to buy the Meizu 20 because it's a great deal for a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 phone. Is it therefore worthwhile to purchase it solely for its performance? It's not a good concept in my opinion. Looking at several benchmarks, the Meizu 20 falls short. Even though Antutu may achieve a high score of 1.3 million, Geekbench reveals that its multi-core is much inferior to other phones, scoring just approximately 8+ on the Gen 1 scale. The CPU throttling test results were similarly unsatisfactory. This is not a promising sign. Let's get started. Although the frame rate curve is not as awful as the score and the temperature is not excessively high, this is not a particularly good performance. During combat, the frame rate rapidly lowers. So, if you want a cheap but powerful phone, consider the Nubia Z50. The Meizu 20's camera performs admirably. During the day, the main camera is comparable to the Xiaomi 13, except that the white balance is better, otherwise, there is nothing wrong with it. When photographing flowers, the colors are more natural and the saturation is less overpowering. The dynamic range is also improved, so the contrast appears lower. It has a minor issue at night when the highlighted area is overexposed. The main camera's performance is typically in line with my expectations for a phone at this price point. In daylight, the ultra-wide camera works about as well as the main camera. Both phones have the purple fringe issue, which isn't a big deal given that the Meizu 20 is far less expensive than the Xiaomi 13. The most serious issue with the ultra-wide camera is that the auto mode is frequently underexposed. The image will be quite black as long as there is not enough light. Turning on night mode fixes this issue, however the image quality is still inferior to that of the Xiaomi 13. Although the third camera on the Meizu 20 has a 5-megapixel depth-of-field lens, it isn't utterly worthless. Object identification will be slightly more accurate in portrait mode. A phone without a depth-of-field camera, for example, would defocus a glass table, whereas the Meizu 20 would be able to capture a clear photo of the table. When photographing photographs, it is often easy to identify spectacles. Overall, the Meizu 20's camera system isn't horrible, but you wouldn't buy it for it. The Meizu 20 can record at up to 8K 30 frames per second, while the ultra-wide camera can also shoot at 4K resolution. The visual quality and steadiness are both excellent. I believe its main selling point is the front camera, which supports 4K 60 frames per second in EIS, making this phone ideal for vlogging. I believe the real surprise should be in the design. The flat screen with a flat frame looks nice. This year's regular edition is no longer a little 6.2-inch phone, which means the world has one less manufacturer of small phones. I know what you're thinking after seeing this lens module. This isn't the first time they've done something like this. For a long time, Meizu has been imitating the design of Samsung's flagship phones. But Samsung's phones are stunning, and Meizu didn't imitate the incorrect phone. It also has better build quality than any other phone under $500. If you require a less expensive S23, consider the Meizu 20. To be clear, I'm not making fun of it, this is a genuine compliment. The Samsung S series offers what I consider to be the best CMF in Android phones, so looking that way isn't always a bad thing. It has only 67 watt of charging power. After all, we can't expect too much from the base version. Although it takes longer to fully charge than the Xiaomi 13, the battery capacity is also greater, thus the charging pace is roughly the same. Although there is no wireless charging, the complementary charger is 80 watt and supports a variety of protocols. The phone also supports third-party chargers for quick charging, which is convenient. The battery life is comparable to that of the Xiaomi 13, but I hope the Meizu 20, which has a larger 200 mAh battery, might last a little longer. In truth, Meizu's main benefit is Flyme OS, which is one of the greatest experiences among several Chinese companies. In terms of advantages, it is extremely comparable to MIUI, and the operation logic is very much in accordance with comfort. This floating window function, for example, performs admirably. Swipe up from the bottom corner to open the floating window of any app, just as you would to activate Google Assistant. Close the floating window without clicking any buttons, simply click anywhere outside the floating window. When we mention Flyme, we have to bring up M back. Touch the home button to return to the previous screen, and push hard to return to the desktop. They were the first to bring this operation logic from iOS to Android 8 years ago, and you can still see it on the Meizu 20 today. Furthermore, gesture control is unaffected. Except for the old iPhone SE 2022, only Meizu may be able to grant your dream for a home button on your phone. So, if you enjoy MIUI, you'll like Flyme, and if you despise MIUI, Flyme isn't for you. I bought a Meizu phone a long time ago. Despite the fact that it was not very powerful and the camera was not very nice. I had a limited budget and enjoyed Flyme, so I purchased it nonetheless. I never imagined that today's Meizu 20 would be in the same condition as my old phone. I only recommend it to people who like Flyme and don't have a lot of money to spend on a flagship phone, otherwise, there are far too many better options. Let's give them some time. If they don't die, the next phone might be better.